America's Test Kitchen was the singular vision of one food-obsessed creator. So why was he kicked off of the show? Almost 10 years before America's Test Kitchen launched in 2001, a 32-page magazine debuted called Cooks Illustrated. The magazine, started by Christopher Kimball, who had previously launched Cooks Magazine in 1980, has never accepted advertisements and has been loved by home cooks ever since, as the descriptions of the recipes are lengthy and include the science behind the cooking, as well as stories of testing and how the chefs arrived at the published best version. But after 30 years of publishing without advertisers, Cooks Illustrated is still going strong. Peter Doucette, a managing director at FTI Consulting, told Digiday, America's Test Kitchen made a strategic decision that was atypical at the time, but prescient because they built a stable business, not one that is dependent on episodic ad revenue. Most fans of America's Test Kitchen associate the brand with its founder, Christopher Kimball, as he served as the on-air host from 2001 to 2016. But it might surprise you to learn that Kimball was not a professional chef and never worked in a kitchen before founding Cooks Illustrated and America's Test Kitchen. In some ways, this helped to develop his approach to teaching. Kimball explained to Mostly Food and Cocktails, "I've always been interested in cooking. I spent summers and weekends in Vermont, and in the town there was a baker, Marie. She sold bread and cookies and pies. I spent a lot of time at her house. She had the Vermont technique of teaching. Never tell people what to do, just show them what to do." Kimball said that her approach defined the show-don't-tell style that he would later use on America's Test Kitchen. "If I was doing something wrong, I'd suddenly notice her next to me doing it the right way, without saying anything."
Everyone has failure in the kitchen, it's okay.
Despite Christopher Kimball being the founder of Cooks Illustrated and America's Test Kitchen, he ended up leaving the show after 16 years due to a contract dispute with the show's parent company, Boston Common Press. David Nussbaum, the chief executive of Boston Common Press, released a statement saying, "We made every effort to offer Chris a reasonable contract that reflected his significant contributions to the company and are disappointed that we could not reach agreement." At the time Nussbaum was hired as the company's first ever CEO, a spokesperson for America's Test Kitchen denied rumors that Nussbaum's arrival would push Kimball out. However, bringing someone else on to oversee Kimball, who had long been at the top of the company, seemed to create friction. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he was gone just 2 months later. When Christopher Kimball left the America's Test Kitchen empire, he didn't go quietly. Kimball started a competing brand, also in Boston, called Milk Street Kitchen. There was a corresponding magazine called Milk Street, along with a TV show, a cooking school, cookbooks, and a podcast. That resulted in a lawsuit over breach of trust from Boston Press, claiming that Kimball stole confidential customer lists and trade secrets. As reported in the Washington Post, the suit said, "Mr. Kimball spent the last year of his employment with America's Test Kitchen creating a new venture which literally and conceptually ripped off America's Test Kitchen." In response, the New York Times reported Kimball called the lawsuit absurd and said that it defamed him. The litigation dragged on for almost 3 years and was scheduled to go to trial. Kimball, along with his children and ex-wife, still owned stock in America's Test Kitchen, and eventually he agreed to sell the shares to settle the lawsuit. A joint statement was released, which read in part, "America's Test Kitchen and Christopher Kimball's Milk Street agree that an amicable separation is in the best interest of their respective companies." If you work at America's Test Kitchen, you may have more to look forward to than just skill building and a paycheck. You also get free food, as the leftover recipes that are tested are saved for employees in the take-home refrigerator. This is both part of an effort to reduce food waste and to provide a unique snack or even full meal for the almost 200 hungry workers. However, while employees value this perk, employees complained on Glassdoor of low wages. Afton Cyrus, a former recipe tester at America's Test Kitchen, told WGBH, "People are regularly relying on the take-home fridge for their next meal. It's supposed to be a fun perk for people to enjoy new foods, not something that people need to depend on to make ends meet." However, Aaron McMurray, the Test Kitchen director at America's Test Kitchen, puts a more positive spin on it, saying, "The staff can come and visit that fridge all day long and take food home for dinner. The grocery bills of probably the entire staff have gone down since they started working at America's Test Kitchen."
The leftovers get packed up by all the cooks, and we have a take-home refrigerator.
With all of those extra calories floating around, it might be hard to restrict yourself to a healthy diet. Christopher Kimball and Bridget Lancaster spoke at length with Fresh Air's Terry Gross in 2011 about what happens when you have to eat so many test samples. Lancaster said, "One of the worst things is brownie tastings, because you don't just have to taste them, you have to feed on them all day. One of the test cooks that works there, she and I counted up the calories that we consume in one day, and it was frightening." Kimball said some cooks try to combat the extra weight with extra exercise. Some people take up riding 20 miles back and forth to work on a bike or do other things. But yeah, a lot of people will gain 4 or 5 pounds a year if they're in the process of developing recipes in the kitchen all the time. While anyone who has worked in a kitchen knows that a chef's hands are frequently burnt, cut, scraped, and otherwise terrorized by the hazards of cooking, audiences have different expectations for on-air talent. They don't want to see messy hands around food. At America's Test Kitchen, special hand models stand in for the up-close photography for cookbooks and video segments. Hand model Dan Salucci told CBS, "Yeah, I mean, I'll get a phone call once in a while. Do you mind just getting a manicure?" Two more on-air hand models back up this claim. Vaughn Vreeland told the Wall Street Journal he got a manicure before his job interview with Tasty, while UK model Tara Maney says she expenses all her manicures. America's Test Kitchen has always tried to give practical advice to home chefs, making the cooking process as easy as possible, and that includes using cheap equipment. Julia Collin Davidson, one of the current co-hosts of America's Test Kitchen, explained to WUWM, "Just because you want to start cooking and you want to outfit your kitchen, you don't have to spend a lot. The team's favorite chef knife isn't fancy and costs $45.
Wow.
The book Kitchen Hacks, How Clever Cooks Get Things Done, published by America's Test Kitchen, includes a section on how instead of using a traditional kitchen tool like a stainless steel slicer, a home cook can use unwaxed dental floss instead. The next time you want to serve up some soft cheese at your dinner party, find your next best kitchen tool at the drugstore. After Christopher Kimball departed America's Test Kitchen, new CEO David Nussbaum decided to make some changes, including relocating the whole operation. America's Test Kitchen started on the second floor of a quirky former broom factory in Brookline Village that was 150 years old. But a space that size couldn't accommodate a huge expansion for the sake of more video content, ATK Kids, or group tours. If the brand was going to expand, the space would be the first piece that needed an upgrade. The headquarters was relocated in 2017 into a former military warehouse, graduating to 8 stories in the Boston Seaport, where multiple studios, a library, and over 60 ovens were housed for testing and innovation. WBUR noted the new building was so large that Cook's Country executive food editor Brian Roof uses a Razor scooter to zip around. While the taste testing portion of recipe development sounds fun, it's also quite an extensive and expensive process, as each recipe costs approximately $11,000 to produce. Dan Souza, a food science expert at America's Test Kitchen, elaborated on why the recipes can be so pricey. He noted that part of the process is to try at least 5 recipes to start, bringing over 55 cooks plus the editorial staff to give feedback. The kitchen can test recipes up to 100 times over 2 months before sending them out to volunteer home chefs. Souza said, "We look for 80% of people to say they'd make the recipe again. If they say no, we go back to the kitchen. We have to spend roughly $11,000 on each recipe we do. Considering the company reportedly makes over 1,000 recipes per year, that budget line really adds up." Because those recipes are so expensive to develop, an integral part of the process is volunteer home cooks, 50,000 of them to be exact. Jack Bishop, Chief Content Officer at America's Test Kitchen, said, "This program allows 50 to 100 audience members, including families with kids, to test out a new recipe and contribute data on how easy it was, if it tastes good, and, most importantly, if they would make it again." Stephanie Patterson, one of those volunteer home cooks, told CBS Sunday Morning, "I feel like I'm helping them make the recipe as good as it can be before they print it."
I know it sounds like an amazing job, and it is.
In July 2022, America's Test Kitchen staffers voted to unionize, forming ATK United. About 100 non-management workers delivered a letter to management, which was posted on the ATK United Twitter account. The letter stated plainly, "Our salaries have always been egregiously low." Also included in the letter were complaints about the high profits of the company not being reflected in salary increases for the employees, and how workers at America's Test Kitchen were still sacrificing personally due to insufficient resources. The letter went on to additionally demand higher pay, increased subsidization of commuting costs, lower health insurance premiums, and a commitment to diversity. America's Test Kitchen spokesman Brian Franklin said to WGBH, "The management of the company would prefer to continue to work directly and collectively with employees in the future, rather than have to deal with a union on their behalf." But the majority of workers voted to unionize. Camilla Chaparro, senior books editor, stated, "I am unionizing for the fair pay that we deserve, and I am beyond proud to stand in solidarity with this exceptional group of coworkers and friends." Despite how outwardly successful America's Test Kitchen and the surrounding properties have seemed, there was a major round of layoffs from the company in 2023. According to an Instagram post on ATK United, not only did America's Test Kitchen shut down ATK Kids, but it also let go of about 10% of its total workforce, or 23 employees. ATK Kids was focused on children's cookbooks and kid-friendly recipes, but employees from the standard books and marketing teams were let go too. In a statement to Eater, a spokesperson for ATK said, "While we firmly believe that our decisions will reposition position the company for greater success in this ever-changing media environment. It is a difficult time, given that we let go of members of the company who contributed to ATK each in their own way. Don Tremontazzi, president of Communications Workers of America Local 1400 in Boston, offered his own statement. It's disappointing that this new executive leadership, including the CEO, has made a decision to put profits over people. This is nothing more than corporate greed and not caring about the passionate workers who have built this company and their profits. We are going to do everything within our power as a union to get these employees the best exit packages possible.